Hare Krishna, we will discuss the last section of the second chapter, verses 60 to 72. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Kimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravan Pachani Nirvana Sashyavadi Paskachani Tadakan Shilapopad Ki. So, we have heard about the Stita Prajna, the self-control devotee, but now we will hear about the person in this world who lets his senses go out of control, and this process of going out of control we will study now. And then Krishna therefore advises Arjuna, control your senses by following the regulative principles of freedom, and by doing so one attains the mercy of Krishna and becomes happy. And that so now text 62, 63, with this the process of fall down. But first we have text 60 and 61. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yatato yapikantaya purusasya vipashita indriyani pramatini harante pasabam maha. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. And in the purport, the Srila Prabhupada tells the story of Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was a Kshatriya king, and he wanted to become a Brahmin. And to become a Brahmin, you have to control your senses. So this was in Satya Yuga or something like that, or Treta Yuga. They were living 100,000 years or something. And Vishwamitra was doing yoga, Astanga yoga, to control his senses, and doing austerities for 10,000 years. And if someone does that, then Indra becomes a little nervous. This person may take my post if he becomes too powerful. So he went to Menaka, one of the heavenly society girls, and told to go and disturb the meditation of Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra was doing meditation for 10,000 years and became quite good in it, and in austerities. But then Menaka came before him, and she moved her ankle bells, and he heard the tinkling of the ankle bells. And his mind said, yeah, you are doing austerities for so long, you will not be disturbed. You just take a peek. And he opened his eyes for a moment. And the rest is history. But then he didn't give up. Again, he was doing austerities and for 10,000 of years in meditation. And then again, Indra became disturbed. And he went again to Menaka. Menaka agreed to go again. So that she moved her ankle bells But then, when he heard his ankle bells, he remembered what happened 10,000 years ago. And he became angry. But it's also a fall down. But in his anger, he looked at Menaka, and fire came out of his eyes. And the body of Menaka was burned to ashes. But he didn't give up. Again, he did austerities for 10,000 years. And again, Indra became void. And they went to the Heavenly Society girls, but nobody wanted to go. They saw what happened with Menaka. And then Brahma came down, and he gave Vishwamitra the Brahman thread. He got second initiation. In ISKCON, that's more easy, I think. But anyway, 10,000 years. So it's mentioned in the prophet. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment. So without engaging the mind in Krishna consciousness, one cannot see such material engagement. And then there are these words of Yamunacharya. Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Krishna, and I've been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it, and I spit out a thought. So Krishna conscious is such a transcendental nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man has satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Now Shambharis also conquered, a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. And this verse is repeated in the next verse, and is referred to later again and again. That it means King Ambaresh fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, engaged his word in describing the abodes of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple, in ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the deity, the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers entered or offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to holy places where the temple is situated, his hands in offering obeisance to the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. All these qualifications made him to become a Matpara devotee, a pure devotee of Krishna. So that's the solution. So in 61, Tani sarvani samyamya yukta ashta matpara pashi yasyandriyani tasya prachya pratisthita. When he restrains his senses, keeping them under control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. So how do you keep your mind and senses under control?
Fix consciousness upon Krishna.
Please?
We fix our consciousness on Krishna.
Yeah, what does that mean practically? Yeah, that's all correct, but we just read how to do it. You use your mind to thinking of Krishna, that you use your words to describing Krishna, that your hands in cleansing the temple. You use everything in the service of Krishna. as long as your mind is used in the service of Krishna, it's controlled. If you use it for other things, it's uncontrolled and you suffer. That is the point here. How to keep them under full control, keep them busy in Krishna consciousness. A child who is not engaged in some activity will do naughty things. That we have to engage already always our minds in the service of Krishna. That is how we control the mind in devotional service. Yeah. So, Prabhupada writes that senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service, using them in Krishna's service. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than Vishnu, than the Vishnu form, simply waste their time in vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of the real yoga. So we don't become Zen Buddhists. Zen Buddhists meditating on the clapping of one hand. Anyway, don't worry about it. The process of fall down now. Dayato Vishayapam Sankaste Shivachayate Sangha Sanyate Kama Koda Vijayate. When contemplating the object of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. So that's the beginning of the process of fall down. I read the next verse also. And then from anger, complete delusion arises. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down into the material form. So it starts, the fall down starts with dayate, meditation. You meditate on something other than Krishna. And those who make advertisements, they know that very well. They try to attract the minds of people, but they tell you do the advertisement, you need this, you need that, and you meditate on it. Oh, we are going shopping. Huh? That when you go shopping for Krishna, you make your list before. And that is what you are going to buy, not something else. Shopping does not mean I'm going in the shop and let's see what attracts me and what. No, we don't do that. That is a problem. Dayate, you see the latest car that I want also this car. Dayate Vishaya Pumsam. Vishaya means the object of the senses. On something in this world. We meditate that. And then you develop attachment. Yes, I need this. I want this. Dayate Vishayapamsam. Then Sangha Sayate Kama. Then lust comes. Yes. I'm going to enjoy this. And expectation comes. Expectation comes. But then the expectation, when the so-called enjoyment comes, it's not really what expected. And frustration comes, anger. And when you become angry, you think only on the anger. You cannot think clearly anymore. Your intelligence is lost. And your memory also. And that's the process of fall down. That Prahlad Anonymous always tells the story of the fish. The fish is in the water. We have a fisherman with a fishing line. And at the end of the fishing line, there is a bat, a worm. It's in the water. And the fish comes and sees the bat and thinks, I am going to enjoy. I'm going to enjoy. And it comes. And then it takes the bat. And the fisherman at that time pulls the line up and takes the fish from the hook, cuts it open, the inside out, and put it on the frying pan. So the fish became fried. Because that usually when we tell this joke to a non-English audience, they don't laugh. The English, they will laugh. But because becoming fried is an expression in America, especially in America, to become frustrated. That becoming fried, yeah. That so yes, we become fried, frustrated. That but yes, we become allured. And we meditate on things in this world. That will give me pleasure. That so weird. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Maya Devi. But Haridas easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above-mentioned verse of Yamunacharya, the sincere the devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment. Shuns means avoids. Due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is a secret. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure to ultimately to fail, for the slightest thought of sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his senses. And that's a problem. And that So Prahlad Maharaj said to his father, Matirna Krishna Patosvateva Mitopi Babetya Vishan Antaram Ananda Gopir Vishotam Amishram Punar Sarvata Sarvananam Matirna Krishna Patosvateva Mitopi Babetya Ananda Gopir Vishotam Amishram Punar Sarvata Sarvananam. He said that Matirna Krishna, your attraction for Krishna will never take place. Matirna Krishna, Paratosvatava, not on your own endeavor or not by instruction of others. That Ananta Gavir Vishotam Tamishram, because you are in the lusty well of Hriasta or of family life. That and as such you are on the way to hell. Anandagopir Vishotam Tamishram. Because Prahlad Maharaj said to his father, because Anandagopir, your senses are uncontrolled. Anandagopir Vishotam. Therefore, therefore, you do always the same thing. Eating, sleeping, sex, always the same repeating. Stereotype activities. And what was the reply of Hiranyakashipu? You think you are better than controlling the senses than me. And he became angry. So yeah, that's the fall down. Immediately became angry. That, yeah. See here. Stopping the tendency for sense gratification. If you go that speed, difficult to stop immediately. That tendency. That's difficult. That then take according to one's need, not according to one's greed. That we have to learn. What we really need in Krishna consciousness is not much. Marriage is not for sense gratification. Between brackets. Nothing against this devotee, they are very nice. But, politicians promising sense gratification. If I being elected, I promise this, that. But we need sense gratification. But how much do we need? Isavasyam idam sarvam yatkinshe sharatyam charattena taktena buncheta magrita kasya sviddanam. Everything inanimate and inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota. And one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So what's your quota? Graduates of the Shees upon it.
That what we don't have to endeavor much for, which comes from itself.
Yes, which comes easy. That is, don't over endeavor for getting well and all these things. It's tam jnana sinatmana chitvanam samsyam yogam. Tista bharata. Therefore, the doubts which has arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga or bharat, stand and fight. So yes, that this is the weapon of knowledge. What is this? 270, okay. That. Okay. Not sure why I put this slide here, but anyway, it's certainly the conclusion of what we find in the third chapter, that you must. Is that the fourth chapter? Yeah, that's the fourth chapter. That by the weapon of knowledge, we can slash our ignorance. And when ignorance is coming from lust, that we will see that in the coping of ignorance is there because of lust. But if we get knowledge that we obtain by Krishna consciousness, this darkness of ignorance is not there anymore. And that is a final solution. That's why this verse is there. But we will discuss that tomorrow more deeply. Now, let's wait with that. We have a few verses now to go first before we come in. 64, and that's an interesting verse, 64. Because we see this process of fall down here, but we cannot artificially renounce things. Because in personal state try to avoid material objects, that they cannot enjoy life, and a slight agitation makes them fall down. But the devotee, he knows how to use everything in the service of Krishna, and is offering all material things to Krishna, enjoys the remnants as Krishna prasadam, and becomes purified. That's a more easy process to get rid of this tendency. That now 64, that Ragat Besh Vimuktas tu Vishyam Indriyasharam Atma Vasher Videyatma Prasadama Adhikachati. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So the regulative principles are the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. Is chanting at one side and follow the four regulative principles at the other side. But the following of these four regulative principles gives us freedom. Freedom not to become a servant of the mind. That we are not under control of the mind anymore and the senses. We serve Krishna and we become free. So people say that this Hare Krishna, they are in this sect and they cannot enjoy life, and they feel compassion for these members of this sect. All what's enjoyment in life they cannot have. Pure, they are so poor guys. But no, that's the difference between a liberated person and a control and a conditioned soul. Conditioned soul means you are under the control of the mind. The mind says, no, you must have this enjoyment and that, and you run after it. That becomes the goal of your life, satisfying your mind and senses. It's horrible. But they think it's enjoyment. So it is said here in the purport, unless the sons are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Every moment. We have to be very careful. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinary undesirable. And if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which we would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve instead of his being attached to the sensual platform. That's interesting. Attached means even with an impure heart. We can do that if we ask our senses, mind and senses is always. engaged in Krishna's service. It's so powerful that because the servant of Krishna, that's the point, is a master of his senses. That because he only wants to satisfy Krishna, he can renounce ordinarily desirable things, and he can accept undesirable things for Krishna's service. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of Krishna, which the devotee can achieve in spite of being attached to the sensual platform. So we have to learn that, to 24 hours a day to engage our mind in the service of Krishna. Yes. Now Krishna will say that what's the benefit of one who can do that? And what is the result of someone who does not do that in the next two verses? So he says first, one who follow this principle of always following the regulative principles of freedom of Bhakti Yoga. Prasadi sarva dukkanam anirasya pajayate prasana shatasurya sur buddhi payavatishtate. For one who is satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. We are not suffering anymore. The suffering is because of the mind. If you come under control of the mind, then you suffer. But if you control the mind, no suffering anymore. That's what Krishna says. The threefold miseries do not exist any longer. Because you will satisfied, you feel satisfied in your service to Krishna. So, unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. That disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. When one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. So Prabhupada quotes 527 of Bhagavad Gita. Here. Bhaktam sarvaptapsam sarvalokamashvaram sudam sarvabhutanam yatvam mam shantim richati. That's just the transliteration of this verse. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and without peace. Because he thinks himself the proprietor, he thinks himself the enjoyer. The Krishna consciousness person knows that Krishna is the enjoyer because he's the proprietor of everything. Therefore, he has the right to enjoy. And we are facilitating his enjoyment. And Krishna is our greatest friend. Then you attain peace. So by giving Krishna enjoyment and pleasure, we get ecstasy, a happiness which is thousands of times more greater than even the happiness of liberation. Then you don't want to do anything else anymore. So that's the effect of pure devotional service. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship to Krishna. So that is the message here, that follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, chant, follow the principles, and so on. And then If you do that, you will feel satisfied and not disturbed by suffering of the mind. But if you do not do that, your suffering is without end. But then Krishna gives a warning. Indriyanam icharatam yanmano navidiyate tat asya arti prahyang vayonavam ibam vasi. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away one's intelligence. Purport. Unless all the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. Therefore, think again about the kurma. The tortoise will withdraws his limbs into the shell. The devotee, when he sees opportunities for sense gratification, automatically withdraws himself. I don't want to be here. And he will read or doing something Krishna conscious, but will avoid it. That will never look at the television or something. That internet is also very dangerous. Very dangerous. Only what you need, the internet. Very dangerous for the body. But good. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water. One of the roaming senses. The senses are always roaming for sense gratification and gives their impulses to the mind. Then the mind becomes agitated. Yes, that's what we want. You have to learn to control that. By regulating the senses, we will learn in the 6th chapter on Friday. Krishna will. Now, 68. Tasmayasya mabo nishritani sarvasa indiyanityartabhyas tasya pakha pratishtita. Therefore, mighty arms, one whose senses are restrained from their object is solely of steady intelligence. So one who is restricted from the objects of the senses. If we are engaged in Krishna consciousness, then we are not connected with the object of the senses for sense enjoyment. So as enemies are curbed by a superior force, the senses can similarly be curbed, not by human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. And that's the only way to control your senses. All the other ways will not work. Anayanisa sarva bhutanam tasya shyakti samyami yasyam shakati bhutani sanisha pasyato mune. For this night for all beings is the time for awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. Can someone read the purpose?
There are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective in the way to the cultivation of self-realization. The activities of the introspective stage of thoughtful men are like for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the light of the materialistic man. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep for self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reactions.
So we have the devotee and the non-devotee, they have a different lifestyle. I told that story when I was in Ghent in 94. We had a little center in the middle of Ghent, and I was there with another Bhakta, and we were in the middle. It was summer. That it was 4 o'clock in the morning. We get up, and we pushed out the window. That and the other side of the road was in the middle of the city. There was a nightclub. There they opened the door, and first a lot of smoke came out, and then people were coming out who were not walking straight. So they were going to sleep. We were getting up. A different lifestyle. We live a lifestyle in goodness, and the materialistic people, they live a lifestyle in ignorance, passion, ignorance. Yeah, I know it. That they don't take a shower in the morning. Once a week they take their bath, and so. So there's a difference in lifestyle, complete difference. We are going to Mangalarti and so on. And they are sleeping. So but the time is for the awakening, for the self-control. It's a time for awakening. Yeah, it's night for all other beings. But now text 270, and that's a very important verse. This we spoke about, because Krishna speaks about here. It's what's night for the conditioned souls is the day for the introspective sage or the devotee. So they are different. A devotee controls his mind and senses, and a devotee does not control his mind and senses. But how does a devotee control his mind and senses? That because there are much more details. We have heard engaging in the service of the Lord, but then, yeah, you have to deal also with your mind. That you have to deal with your mind. There are a lot of desires that pop up into the mind. So we will hear about that in 270. Apoyamana machala patistam samutvana papashanti satvat. Tatvat kamayam papashanti sarve sasanti apnoti nakami. A person is not disturbed by the incessant flows of desires that enters like rivers into the ocean, which is ever filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not a man who strives to satisfy such desires. Now, what is said here is, as rivers going to the ocean, and the ocean remains always the same peace. So desires may pop up into the mind of a devotee, but the devotee is not disturbed by it. What happens? My first question to you is, where do the desires that pop up into the mind come from?
The conditioned soul.
No, we are not yet liberated. Yeah. Yeah, there are different origins of these desires. It's a little complicated because the mind is a material element. And we will learn in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna controls the material nature. Prakriti Kriyamanani. They say, Maya Dakshina Prakriti, Chusechecha Chacham, 9:10 Bhagavad Gita. I control material nature. I'm the superintendent of material nature. So you have material desires, can come from previous lives. That's the first option. And they pop up, and it's the super soul that brings them into our mind. They are material desires. What happens with material desires? We have just discussed Dayate Vishyapam Samsanges Te Simhachayate Sangha Sayate Kamakam Kodavijayate. What happens with a material desire? It's never satisfied. It's not giving you what you want. You become frustrated, angry. It's never satisfied. Krishna will say that in the next chapter also, that the influence of lust, avitam jnanam itana jnana nitya kamrupena kantya duspurana alenasha. This duspurana alenasha, this lust can never be satisfied. You remain always unfulfilled in these material desires. So we have so many material desires of our past lives, and they are stored in our subconsciousness as samskaras, impressions. But Krishna knows it. And he picks up one desire and it pops up in our mind. It pops up in our mind. And now you have two possible reactions. The reaction of a devotee and a reaction of a conditioned soul. A conditioned soul, he identifies with the mind. He thinks I'm the mind. So naturally he thinks this is my desire. And it says good, let's go for it. But the devotee is different. He controls his mind. So that means he can observe his mind. He does not identify. You can only do that if you have spiritual strength by chanting Hare Krishna and have a good morning program. That's important. That gives you the spiritual strength. This desire comes up into the mind, and the devotee observes it and thinks, what kind of desire is this? Is that a desire to please Krishna? No. This is a material desire. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yeisam svasyabhra dukkhyona evate, atyantvam dekantesha, natishra mate buddha. The sages have said that material desires, that if you try to enjoy in this world, you will suffer. And it's not worthwhile, it's temporary. So I don't want to suffer. I don't want to fulfill that material desire. Forget about it. And it disappears. It's not disturbed by it. You just let it go. So many desires enter in its mind. It doesn't care. I'm going to serve Krishna. I'm not going to fulfill these desires. And that is that's a difference between a devotee and a conditioned soul. And we have the freedom not be under control of these material desires and this mind. And that's a great freedom that otherwise we suffer like anything. Now, there are other sources of desires. A desire can come from the spirit soul. Yes. A desire can also come through the environment. If you are in an environment where there's a lot of drinking and all sensual activities are going on, that enters your consciousness. So we don't go in such an environment. So I've put that here on the slides. So impression of our previous lifetimes are stored in our subconsciousness. Impressions of our previous lives are influencing us from our subconsciousness. It's the super soul who brings it in our mind. The influence of the three modes are influencing us over many lifetimes. And that's a fact. These material desires are still in our subconsciousness. But when they pop up, and then we don't want to fulfill them, they disappear and is solved. That Satchidananda Maharaj, this was the beginning of the 90s in Radhadesh. He gave a seminar and he said, before you're going to sleep, you make a paper. And on that paper you write, today I will see myself of the observer, especially the observer of the mind. If you can do that, you are Krishna conscious. The next morning you get up, you look at that paper, and if you can do that, you are Krishna conscious. You observe, don't identify with the mind. Observe, that's important. Otherwise you are lost, just lost. So there is the story of Dhruva Maharaj and the desires of his previous life. Yeah, and that's interesting. Dhruva Maharaj, he wanted to take revenge because he was thrown off by his stepmother from the lap of his father. A whole story. But he wanted revenge. And his mother Suniti said, I cannot help you. But great sages, they are worshipping the Supreme Lord by austerities in the forest. And they come in contact with the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord can help you. So he went to the forest, 5 years old. He had Kshatriya blood. He said, I will do it. And then he met Narada Muni, and Narada Muni said to Dhruva, austerities, that's for grown-up men. Go back to your mother. Don't that. But Dhruva said, no, I will do it. That he had this Kshatriya blood. And Narada tricked him and said, yes, because he wanted a kingdom greater than his father out of revenge. He wanted a kingdom greater than his great-grandfather was Lord Brahma, who the whole universe. He had the whole universe, so he wanted the whole universe. That was his material desires. Can you have a bigger material desire? But Narada Muni said, you chant this, you do your austerities, okay, but you make a deity of the Lord and you meditate on it while you do your austerities, and you chant always Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. But then Galli became purified, he became a devotee, and he came eye in eye with Lord Vishnu. And when he was absorbed in the beauty of Lord Vishnu, he felt ashamed. That is much greater than anything material. So I don't want to fulfill that desire anymore. But the Lord said, okay, but I have still some service for you. I want the next 32,000 years, I want you to rule the entire universe. So he became the ruler of the entire universe. And after that, he got Dhruva-loka, the pole star, which is a spiritual planet within this planet, within this universe. He got something greater than Brahma. I mean, we have to be careful with our desires. That's here. When Vishnu touched his head with conch, he became completely purified. And he said, I don't want these material desires anymore. I don't want it anymore. It's like broken glass. I have a diamond now. Yeah. Anyway, text 71. Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumam sarati nishpriya nirmamo nirankara sansantim adhigacchati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain peace. Anyway, we will come to that. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna consciousness is actually desireless. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servant of Krishna, without falsely claiming the material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship or anything in the world, is a perfect state of Krishna consciousness. At the end, a materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna. Isavasyam idam sarvam, Isavasya principle. And therefore, he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely, knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and that the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. So our anarthas are all these material desires. Anartha is what does not give spiritual benefit. The entire body is an anartha. The body is a covering of the spirit's soul. It limits our natural capacities. Our true nature is not satisfied. However, there is a path of pure devotion and service. Yes. Everyone wants a peaceful, calm life. Do we get it? Here are the devotees chanting. Why do I need to work so hard to get the material necessities? No need. This is not sentiment. It is a science of Krishna consciousness. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Only a Mukta Sangha person can understand this science. One who has freed from material attachment. It cannot be understood by Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Dhyana Yoga, but simply by chanting Hare Krishna. It is possible. And that's it. The last verse. This is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So one can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second, or one may not attain such a state life after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. And then he states, Katvanga Maharaj, the demigods, they gave the blessing of Katvanga to Katvanga Maharaj, that because Katvanga Maharaj fought for the demigods, and they wanted to give him a benediction, everything you desire in this world. And Katvanga Maharaj said, wait a minute. He asked the question, how long do I have still to live? And the demigod said, only a moment. And And he forgot about the benediction. He fixed his mind on Krishna and left his body and went back to the spiritual world. If one is fortunate, one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and devotional service to the Lord, since both of them are absolute. To be engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. At the end, that in the second chapter, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga have been discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga is also being given as the contents for the complete text. That is the chapter. So, a little recap from the last 3 verses. The Krishna consciousness person is satisfied in a transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, he can remain steady like an ocean and attain peace. Although material desires are present, he lost all inclinations for sense gratification. He does not identify all these material desires in his mind as this is mine. He doesn't catch them. He leaves them there and they leave. The living entity cannot be desireless of senseless, but he has to change the quality of his desires. Real desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification, but to desire everything for the satisfaction of Krishna. And then the last verse, that there is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom, when we become pure in our consciousness. Then we are in the kingdom of God. We don't identify with this body anymore. The subtle body is spiritualized. And when this body runs out, we are in our spiritual body. How that happens, we can read in the first canto, or Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva how he got his spiritual body, how it works. It's explained there how it works. And also Dhruva Maharaj, at the end, after his 32,000 years of rule and so on, he goes back to Vaikuntha, how he steps off the head of death into the Vaikuntha airplane. So that was chapter 2. Any question further? Yes. Yeah. No. That depends. Because the soul, because the consciousness of the soul is contaminated. And because of that contaminated, the soul creates attachments foreign to its nature. And therefore material desires. But it's a super soul that, although we desire, the soul desires, because the soul has no connection with the material body, it's a super soul who first knows our desire and brings it in the mind. That's interesting. That yes.
Was devoid of desire, yes?
No. No, Paramatma desires that we go back to the spiritual world, that we serve him in pure devotional service. That's his desire. That desires of Krishna, the super soul of Krishna are one, no difference. Krishna says, Yadaya Dai Dharmasya Glani Bhavara Bharata Bhutanam Dharmasya Tatatmam Chichamyam. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious principles, I descend to teach again Krishna consciousness. So that's a clear desire of the Supreme Lord. We have desires, Krishna has desires, but the natural desires of the soul is it's a desire to serve Krishna. And the natural desire of Krishna is to serve us. He's a servant of Arjuna, we heard. So there is this relationship. And we have to live in that relationship. It's beautiful and it's natural. That, yeah.
So it's subdued to Paramatma.
Yes.
Soul is subdued to Paramatma. Is it correct?
We also. Because Krishna consciousness, we just heard, means follow the dictations of the super soul. We do what the super soul wants, and the conditioned soul doesn't care. And that's the difference. That, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Technically happens with the mind in Brahman words. Is it easier to observe the mind? Is that why we visit meditation?
A Brahma Mukta is a period of goodness. It's more easy to control the mind. It's more peaceful. It's the best moment for spiritual practice, 20 minutes before the sun comes up. Therefore, in the morning, we have Mangalarti. That usually in India is around that time, but of course here it's different. But we follow the same tradition. But therefore we should practice, have our practice in the morning. Good. Thank you very much. We look forward to discuss tomorrow chapter 3.
Bhakti Maharaj ki
Srila Prabhupada ki